Hey guys, welcome to another video, and today I'm looking at this EQ-81 from IK Multimedia. It's another one of the T-Rax plugins, and this is basically an emulation of a Neve 1081 console channel strip module. I've got it on a bass and drum track here, and I've EQ'd both the bass and the drum track to be thinner, with more emphasis on the crack of the edge of the snare and the upper present frequencies. It sounds like this. Okay, so the 1081 emulation from T-Rax, IK Multimedia. Now, if you look in the description below this video on YouTube, you'll see a link there to our T-Rax playlist. That's all the videos we've done on all the T-Rax stuff so far, and we add to them as we go along when we have time. And in that playlist, we've already done a full in-depth review and tutorial on this. This is the T-Rax EQ-73, and this is an emulation of the sort of less feature-rich and earlier produced Neve 1073 channel strip, which is a very simple 3-band EQ with a low cut. And it's a superb EQ, this, absolutely brilliant. Well, this is the 1081 emulation, and the 1081 is the big brother of the 1073 basically, so it's got more features. And if you think about it, at the time that this was released, 1972, very little electronic music around, and so, you know, this was produced as a more advanced channel strip module for Neve consoles with better features to allow you to really sculpt real instruments. That was its primary purpose at the time. Basses, drums, vocals, acoustic guitars, electric guitars, etc. Okay, and that's what its forte is, but it translates just as well to modern electronic equipment and sounds. And the secret for me with this EQ is about the two mid bands here, which we'll talk about in a bit. Okay, so it's a clone of the 1081. Then let's see what we've got. Well, we've got a low and a high cut here. Okay, they both roll off at 18 dB an octave, and the outer control here is for the low cut, and you've got a low cut of 27 Hz, 47 Hz, 82 Hz, 100 Hz, or 270 Hz, or off. And then the inner control is for the high cut, which can cut at 3.9K, 5.6, 8.2, 12K or 18K, or again can be off. So there's your low and high cut there. And then you've got 4 EQ bands. You've got a low shelf and a high shelf, both switchable, and they can be switched into peak mode if you like. And then 2 mids, which are both peak bands. Now the 2 mids can be switched into high Q. So from the get-go they've got a tighter Q, but all of these bands boost or cut by 18 dB. And they all have proportional Q, meaning that the more you boost or the more you cut, the tighter the band of frequencies becomes that you're boosting or cutting, based around the center frequency. But as I said, the 2 mids have this high Q switch to go for a tighter Q from the get-go. But even if that's in, these bands still exhibit proportional Q the more you boost or cut. And switching in the high Q switch just has this effect of focusing that frequency area that little bit more. All right. So that's your features for the sort of emulation. And the other stuff on here is, well, there's a reset switch like on all IK Multimedia plugins, really useful to quickly set the plugin back to a default state. There's a phase reverse switch. There's an on-off switch to turn the EQ on and off completely, the whole plugin, but there's also an EQ switch, so you can have the plugin on and the EQ off, and that would allow you to use the input-output controls if you wanted to just add the sound of the preamp being driven. Now IK Multimedia have attempted to model the Marinier transformer preamps of these Neves, both this and the 1073, and they've done a really good job. And you can hear that if I just take the EQ out completely, the plugin is now on, and I set both the in and out to 0. Right, now obviously you're going to see more of a difference switching to mic, where this input has more range. But if you just listen to the drums now, let's just have the drums on their own. So this plugin is on, but the EQ's out completely. We're just listening to the sound of the signal coming through this preamp model and out the other side. Okay, that's incredibly subtle, but switch to mic and now you'll hear a difference. It adds a little bit of extra loudness, but it's also just bringing, it subtly brings the presence of everything forward a bit. And of course you can drive that. You're not going to get distortion out of this, but you get that pleasant drive characteristic, and you can use that just on its own if you want. So the more you drive it, the more it starts to sort of not distort but subtly saturate the bass end. So you can use some of that, and then you've got the option of bringing EQ in it as well if you like. Right. So on the drums, the way I got it set here is I've got an 82 Hz low cut. Now first of all, that's just taking out the bottom end, the real deep bottom end out of the drum signal. It's a stereo kit passing through here. Then just above that 82 Hz cut, I've got my low band here switched to 100 Hz, and I'm giving it a little bit of boost with peak. Doesn't have to be peak, but at 100 Hz. So this allows me to bring in some low bass. It's not sort of deep bass, but low bass above the 82 Hz cut if I want to warm up the bottom end. And that's going to affect the kick and the very bottom end of the snare. So I've got a little bit of that to taste, and I can adjust that anytime I like. And then up at the top end, I'm using a bit of 4.7K. It's not super high treble. 4.7K, you've got a sort of metallic fizzy quality to the treble edge at that kind of frequency area, where you can still detect pitch in the fizz of the treble, so to speak. But it hasn't gone right up into the high sugar frosting frequencies, right? So it's a slightly metallic edge treble area. Which is bringing out a lot of that very high metallic edge of the snare as well as the metallic edge of the hat. So it's not sort of really high up like at 10K or something where it'd be more high-end frosty fizz. Okay, so that's the low and the tops, but as I said earlier, the thing about this EQ that for me is its secret weapon are these two mids. Okay, now let me explain that. Here's your low mid, here's your high mid. Now the first four frequency bands on the low and the high mid are spaced closely together, and then the fifth one is still close but slightly wider apart. And what that means is that with the two mids, the low mid and the high mid allow you to really tune in to quite closely spaced frequency bands in the low body mid-range frequencies of the sound and the high upper presence body frequencies of the sound. So if you look at this bottom mid here, the first lower frequency selections are 220 Hz, then 50 Hz up from that 270, then 60 Hertz up from that 330, and then 60 Hertz up from that 390, and then 80 Hertz up from that 470. So these 4 bands, and to an extent the 5th one, are spaced quite close together. And then after that, as you go up further, you're starting to see the bands space out more. And so the last 3 bands here are, the last 3 frequencies here are 200 Hertz apart pretty much, right? So because these 4 bands here, and to an extent the 5th one, are all focused around the lower body tonal frequency of sounds, vocals, acoustic guitars, drums, etc., etc., it allows you to really zone in on the particular body frequency area for the lower mid body of the sound, and then tune it to taste. And then with the upper, it's the same. The first 4 frequencies are very tightly spaced. 1.5K, 300 Hertz up from there, 1.8K, and then 400 Hertz up from there, 2.2K, and then 500 Hertz up 2.7, and then 600 Hertz up 3.3. So again, these first 4, and to an extent the 5th frequency selector, are tightly spaced, allowing you to really zone in on the particular area in the upper mid-range presence frequency area of the sound before you get to this 3.3K where treble starts to roll in. And it allows you to really sculpt, choose that particular upper body presence area, zone in on it, and then adjust to taste. So it's an excellent EQ for sculpting the sort of tonal body character of sounds, the lower body area and the upper presence body area. Yeah, and incidentally, on the upper mid here, these 3 frequencies, 3.2, 4.8 and 7.2, they're printed incorrectly on the GUI. Now I've checked this and I've talked with IK Multimedia, and this selector does actually select the correct frequencies that were on the 1081 up from 3.3K. This one should be 3.9K. It is 3.9K, but on the GUI it says 3.2. Then the next one is 4.7K, and then it goes to 5.6K. Although it printed on the GUI here it says 7.2. It is choosing 5.6K, which is what the 1081 has. Then up from there, 6.8K and 8.2K. So these 3 frequencies here are labelled incorrectly, but in the model they are choosing the correct frequencies to emulate the 1081. Okay, but on both the mids, as I said, the secret of this is the first 4 bands are tightly spaced on each of the mids, allowing you to zone in on the particular lower body and presence upper body areas of the sound that you want, and then after that the frequencies become spaced out wider for sort of these areas in the sort of what would you call this? This would be the upper low mid-range area, and here would be the upper high mid-range working into treble area, right, where you don't need such fine adjustment. Okay, so the way I've got it on the kit is, as I said, the 82 Hertz low cut, and then I've got bass end to taste with this 100 Hertz boost here I can bring in or actually cut back. But with my mids, I can go in and let's set these 2 flat. I can actually go into the mids here. But what I'll do to achieve this is I'll give it a big boost, really big boost, so I can hear those frequencies that I'm selecting in this body area here. If I bring in the high key, you'll hear it even more pronounced, right? So these are what I call in my EQ tutorials large yogurt pot, small cardboard box working down bigger and bigger cardboard box, low mid tones. And you can really zone in on the one you want. And then I can dip that down a bit, which is thinning out that low mid body area around 270 Hertz with quite a tight Q, but that can be brought out. So it's a bit of a wider cut, and then I can bring up that bottom end below these lower mid body tones like that. Okay, and then with my upper mid here, these body tone areas, presence areas here, frequency areas here, they're going to be that cracking edge of the snare, that sort of metallic wood crossover crack presence frequency area that you get on snares, but it's also a critical area on things like acoustics, electrics, vocals, etc. Give it a big boost. Again, I'll put the high Q in so it's really pronounced, you hear it. And then these are the sort of critical upper mid presence frequency areas, and I can tune in to listen to those. And I'm boosting it a lot, but it's not harsh at all. But you can hear, this is what I call, and again in my EQ tutorials, I call these, as you start coming down from 3K, you start working out of the lower treble area into what I call these presence areas, these upper mid presence areas, which sound like different sized plastic yogurt pots. You know when you get a plastic yogurt pot and you tap it, it goes like that, or, you know, I've got a little plastic top here for the Mr. Sheen, you know, that sort of, you know, that's a high presence mid frequency. Yeah, different size plastic yogurt pots. So these are the yogurt pot frequencies, working smaller, getting bigger, bigger, bigger. And then as you go into the mids here, the yogurt pot tone gets bigger and bigger, and eventually starts to transition into the sound of a small cardboard box, which progressively gets bigger down the frequencies in the low mids you go. So we can, you know, zone in and listen to these yogurt pot overtones. And I chose that one, 1.8, and just give it a bit of boost, which is bringing out that cracking, slightly metallic, woody presence, upper mid presence area edge of the snare to make it really crack. Dipping down those low cardboard boxy mids around 270 there, and I can bring in bottom end to taste. Yeah, that's my drum sound. On the bass, it's a similar thing. Here's my bass EQ. What I'm doing on this is, again, I've got an 82 Hz low cut. And then again at 100 Hz, just above that, I'm actually cutting a bit. So I'm doing a low cut at 82. I could cut at 100. But I'm doing a low cut at 82 rather than at 100. And then further cutting with this shelf above the 82 Hz low cut. But I've got the option to always bring that up to add some upper bass. It's not working into really low mid range yet, but sort of upper bass territory, bottom end if I want to. But I've got it quite thin because I was going for a more old school sound here with the drums and the bass, where they're thinner. There's no sort of bone crushing bottom end in old school tunes. So I've just gone for this. It slightly gives it an old school feel, but also a more garagey sort of feel. It's a thinner overall sound on the drums and the bass, and that would allow me to put in a scratchy electric in there and a more ambient vocal in that space that you create by rolling the bass end off things. And then the drums themselves are in that room tone and that room sound, and that cracking edge I've dialed in on the snare, that thinness to the kit generally, brings out that ambience on the room. So yeah, 82 Hz low cut on the bass. Then at 100 Hz I'm dipping again, but I've got the option to bring that up to add some bottom end if I want. But then again, it's the same with my mids as on the drums. I've got this ability to tune into the low body frequencies and the upper presence body frequencies, but what I'm doing is I'm just dipping both down. Right? So I'm carving out the mids a bit to thin the bass out. Then at 4.7K again, I'm giving it some fizz up at the top there in those metallic presence upper treble areas. So I'm emphasizing, by putting that 4.7 on there, I'm emphasizing string sound, fret sound, etc. Just to contribute to that overall thinner bass tone I'm going for. And the two together. But mixed that way with the bass end down, they're quite revealed in their mid and upper presence and treble frequency tones. Okay, that's the drums and bass there on those. Okay, and then boink, I've got a couple of acoustics here. There's a couple of Martin recordings that I got off the web, but they're quite useful for doing these EQ tests. Okay, now this is a Martin being played down in the first position, so there's a lot of the bassier strings, the E and the A string, are being played. There's more deep body tone to the acoustic on this one, and the way I've got this EQ'd is, again, I've got an 82 Hz low cut. Then at 100 Hz, again, I've got that ability just above the low cut at 100 Hz to bring in some low bottom end taste. Then my body tone, I've gone for 270 Hz with a little bit of a dip to take out that boom. There was a little bit of a boominess, which I wanted to thin out. It wasn't like nasty, but just the body of the guitar in that lower frequency body area. And then I think I've slightly moved this EQ, but I've gone for, I think it was 2.2 I had originally. A little bit of boost at 2.2 to give it some upper presence body, because it's been played in the first. Have a listen. If you listen with the EQ out, the body tone in the lower mids is very fractionally dominating. If I boost this up, you can hear it. Hence, I've dipped that down. Okay, take the EQ out again, listen to it raw. So I've dipped that 270 down just a smidge. And then I'm focusing in the upper frequency to bring some of the upper presence, upper mid-range presence body frequency back. If I give that a boost in the high Q and listen to those tones in the upper presence area here. Okay, so this is too big yogurt potty. It's got like that. Yeah, and this is ga. So this is a bit higher up again. Or like ga, right? So that's where I'm boosting, just to give it that little bit of it. It's not upper mid. It's more transitioning up, starting to transition into low treble. So it's got less sort of honky, lower mid presence tone. Which really, to me, brings it out beautiful. I've got the option of using high Q if I want. Then up at the top at 6.8K, if I really boost that, you'll hear it. It's the silver of the top of the strings. And if I switch between these first three treble upper shelf frequencies, have a listen. You see 3.3, you're coming down the treble frequencies, working towards very high upper mid, and then you start getting these metallic type tones coming in the fizzy trebleness. And as you start working up from there, that metallic edge starts to transition into more of a sizzle and then a silver. So up here I'm getting that real, not, if I went for 10K it'd be too high up. So this is giving me just a little bit of string tone, metallic quality, but not much. But the glisten as well, it's transitioning, you know, you get up to about 6K here and it transitions from there up to 10K, that's where your glisten starts to come on. That just makes it more defined. But I've always got the ability, if I want to bring in more low, really bottom body tone, upper bass. And it's because I'm cutting above that at 270 in those lower mid body areas just above that 100 Hz. Bringing this up doesn't sort of, it's just adding the very low tone, which is just warmth rather than body tone itself. So it's just, this is a warmer rather than a tonal thing I can bring in if I want to. That's just brilliant, this EQ. Okay, and then I've got another Martin acoustic. This one's been played higher up from the first position. It sounds like it's been played with a capo or something. Yeah. So what I'm doing with this is I'm using the low cut again. This guitar has been played higher up the fretboard, so there are much less low body tones. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm low cutting at 47 Hz, and really that's just so if there's any sort of rumbly, sort of muddy stuff down there that you can't really hear, but it might be muddying things up, that's just going to just tail off that bottom end, the really low bottom end. But then this time at 180 Hz, I've got my bass low shelf tuned into that, which means I can bring in that very low mid, because down at 100, with the way this guitar's being played, there's less low frequency content. So this going down to 100, it's more of a rumble. The sort of tone of the strings is more up here. But I've got the option to bring some of that into taste on that bottom end. And then I'm going for the 270 Hz again with the dip. Again, if I put that right up and listen. So that's where my sort of little bit of boominess in that, around that 270. So I'm dipping that down a bit, which is not massively tonally changing the guitar, but it's just really sort of helping to re-emphasize the finer stuff, the edge, the presence a little bit. But it's not taking away warmth from the guitar. It's just helping to define the upper mid here. Now you're gone for 1.5k, a little bit of boost. And the reason I'm doing that and not a little bit higher up is if you listen to these tones boosted with high Q, or with the guitar being played up here in a higher octave, that becomes, oh, this is more like a sort of, when it's not on too much, it's more of a sort of flute-like tone with the ringing of the guitar at those higher frequencies. So some of that is bringing out that little flutiness, yeah? And then at 4.7k, I've got some boost up there. It could be 6.8, just a taste really. I've gone for the 4.7, I think, because 6.8, yes, I'm getting that transitioning into silver high-end treble, but the guitar's being played higher up to start with, so if you listen to this, the 4.7 is giving me not just some fizz, some nice upper end to the strings and everything, gloss, but it's also giving me some very high guitar tone, which is a consequence of the guitar being played higher up there. I absolutely love this EQ. It's fantastic. Okay, so there it is. Just to finish up, the other features on it are common to all T-Rack's IK Multimedia plugins. You've got the reset button, which makes resetting really quick. When it's on a stereo track, you've got the option to work in left-right, where whatever you EQ here, EQs the left and right side of the stereo signal equally, or you can switch and EQ the left and the right differently, or you can do mid-side processing, right? So you've got that, and you've got the undo and redo here, which is really useful. If you make a tweak and you can sort of go, oh, undo, 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 whatever it did, redo, redo. And then you've got this bank copying system here. Again, this is on all the IK Multimedia T-Rack's plugins, and it's absolutely brilliant. I've set up this EQ. Let's do this on the drums to show you this a bit more obvious. So here's my drums, and I've got this EQ. Okay, so that's in bank A. So I copy it and paste it into any of the other three banks, bank B. Now A and B are identical. So I can go to B and I can go, right, well, let's go with 2.2K on the snare. And let's go with a 220 Hertz dip, a bit more. Yeah, just leave it like that. And it's a subtle difference. And I can then switch on the fly between the two variations and listen. Yeah, this is incredibly useful. I mean, imagine you're EQing a vocal or an acoustic or something, or a synth or whatever, and you can set up the basic EQ and go, yeah, I kind of like that. Well, let me copy that into B and make some subtle adjustments. Okay, now let's copy A and put it into C as well, and then make some different adjustments there. Then as you're listening to that vocal or acoustic or synth or whatever it is, in context, you can switch between the three different EQ settings you've got, which are subtly different, and listen and go, okay, you know what, I'm going to go with B, whatever. I can't tell you how useful this is. Yeah, and so there's that feature as well, and you've got a phase reverse down here. Yeah, it doesn't sound particularly generic. It's got character. Anyway, there it is. That's the EQ-81 from IK Multimedia, the Neve 1081 clone. I love it to bits. Check out the playlist of all the T-Rack stuff in the description below. Any comments, let me know, and we'll talk about it. Okay, I'll see you for the next one, guys. Bye.